Snow fell slowly from the dark sky, covering the trees and ground in thick white. The wind howled like a wild beast outside, shaking the walls of the small wooden cabin. Inside, Jack sat near the fireplace, wrapped in a thick blanket, sipping hot broth from a metal cup. The fire crackled and popped, its orange glow dancing on the walls. This planet was cold, far from any cities, and Jack liked it that way. No noise, no people. No war, just quiet and snow and peace. He glanced at the old clock on the wall. It was almost midnight. The forest outside was dark and still. Nothing ever happened here. Not at this hour. Not on this planet. Then he heard it. A soft, weak sound, almost lost in the wind. Knock, knock. Jack froze. He listened, holding his breath. Nothing. Then knock, knock again. Louder this time. Someone was at the door. He stood up slowly, grabbing the old shotgun hanging near the fire. No one should be out here, especially not in this freezing storm. He stepped carefully to the door and placed his hand on the handle. His heart was beating hard in his chest. He opened the door just a little and peeked out there, kneeling in. The snow was a figure, a woman but not human. She had glowing blue skin, long black hair covered in snow, and her eyes, bright silver and full of pain, looked up at him. She held something in her arms, wrapped in torn, dirty cloth, a bundle. Small and shaking, the woman's lips trembled, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, take him, please." Then she collapsed face first into the snow. Jack threw the door wide open. The cold rushed in like a wave, biting his skin. He dropped the shotgun and ran to her. Her body was ice cold, her breathing shallow. The bundle in her arms made a soft, weak sound, a baby. He carried them both inside. Kicking the door shut with his boot, the warmth from the fire hit their frozen skin. He laid the woman on the floor near the fire and unwrapped the bundle. Inside was a baby, alien teen, thin and sick-looking. With the same blue skin and silver eyes, it whimpered, trying to move its small arms. Jack moved quickly. He poured some of his broth into a clean cup, dipped a cloth in it, and gently touched it to the baby's lips. The baby drank weakly, then more, then stopped crying. The woman didn't wake. Jack checked her pulse weak, but still there. He carefully laid a blanket over her and placed the baby in a basket beside her. He sat back, watching them both, his mind spinning. Who were they? Where did they come from? Why were they out there in the snow, dying? The baby made a soft cooing sound. It looked up at Jack, its silver eyes wide and unblinking. Jack sighed, rubbing his forehead. "What? This isn't what I signed up for," he muttered. "I came out here to be alone," but he couldn't leave them. Not now, not after seeing that. He stood and added more wood to the fire, warming the room. The baby fell asleep, safe in the basket. The woman didn't move. Hours passed. The wind outside grew louder, blowing harder against the windows. Jack stayed awake, watching over them. He made more soup, cleaned the cabin, and checked the baby every few minutes. He didn't know why he cared so much, but he did. Just before dawn, the woman stirred. She groaned softly and opened her eyes. When she saw Jack, she tried to sit up, panicked. Where is he?" she whispered, her voice dry. Jack pointed to the basket. "He's right there. Safe," he said gently. The woman reached out a shaky hand toward her baby. Touching his head with trembling fingers, she let out a soft cry, half relief, half sorrow. Jack handed her a cup of warm broth. "Drink this," he said. She looked at him with fear, then slowly took the cup and drank. After a few sips, she coughed, then whispered, "Thank you." Jack sat beside the fire, staring into the flames. He didn't ask her name. Not yet. She looked too weak, too scared. But he knew one thing: she wasn't dangerous. She was just a mother, trying to save her child. As the first light of morning broke through the clouds, the woman spoke again. Her voice was barely audible. "Valet," she said. Jack turned to her. "What? My name is Valet," Then she closed her eyes and slipped back into sleep. Jack looked at her, then at the baby. He didn't know what he was getting into. But one thing was clear. He couldn't turn them away. Not now. Not ever. Asterisk. The cabin was quiet. The only sound was the soft breathing of the baby and the gentle crackle of the fire. Jack sat near the window, tired eyes watching the snow fall. He hadn't slept much, not with two strangers lying under his roof. He glanced at the woman Vela still. Unconscious on the floor, her body wrapped in warm blankets, the baby slept peacefully in a small box lined with cloth. It almost felt peaceful. Almost. Then she screamed. Jack jumped to his feet, knocking over his cup. Belay sat up, eyes wild, breath fast, and her hands searching for something invisible in the air. Her voice rose again sharp, panicked, full of fear. No. Don't take him, please. I'll do anything, just. Don't take him. Jack rushed to her, hands up, showing he meant no harm. Hey, you're safe. Calm down. But she didn't hear him. She grabbed the fire poker and pointed it at him like a weapon. Her arms shook, but her eyes burned with rage and fear. Where is he? What did you do to my son? She shouted, her voice breaking. Jack took a careful step back and pointed slowly to the sleeping baby. He's right there, safe and warm. I didn't touch him, I swear. Valet's eyes snapped to the basket. She dropped the poker instantly and crawled to the child. Her hands shook as she touched his head, checked his breathing, and pressed her ear to his chest. She let out a soft breath of relief, her body trembling. Jack stayed silent, giving her space. After a few moments, she looked up at him with tears. In her silver eyes, her voice was softer now, but still full of pain. I thought you took him like the others. Jack crouched down near the fire but kept his distance. I don't know who the others are, he said gently. But I'm not one of them. I just found you outside last night. You were freezing. I brought you in. Vele looked down, ashamed. She brushed snowflakes from her child's cheek and held him close. She stayed quiet for a while, then finally said, You should have left me there, Jack. Raised an eyebrow. Yeah, well, yes. That's not really my style. She blinked at him, confused. Jack sighed and poured hot broth into a small cup. He slid it across the floor toward her. Here, eat something. You need strength. Belay didn't move at first. She looked at the cup like it might be poisoned. Then, after a long pause, she picked it up and sipped slowly. Her hands still trembled, but her eyes stayed locked on Jack. She didn't trust him, not yet, but the warmth of the drink seemed to help. After a few sips, she spoke again. I'm sorry I screamed, she said. I thought you were one of them. Jack tilted his head. One of who? She looked away, her voice flat. The hunters. Jack didn't press her. He could see how heavy her heart was. Instead, he added more logs to the fire and sat quietly. Eventually, she spoke again. My people. We used to live in the mountain. Cities, we were peaceful. We built things. We sang. She paused, eyes distant. But then they came. The black-armored ones. They didn't want our land or gold. They wanted us. Jack listened closely. Valet went on. They call it biocapture. They take the strong ones, break their minds, use them as weapons. And if you fight back, she didn't finish. Jack didn't need her to. He looked at the baby sleeping in her arms and him. Valet held her child tighter. They don't want him yet, but they will. His kind, our kind. We glow. When we're scared, it's how they track us. Jack rubbed his face. So you ran? She nodded. I ran until I couldn't run anymore. I was going to leave him at your door and disappear. But I didn't make it. There was silence again. Only the wind outside spoke now, blowing softly against the walls. Then Jack stood, walked to the shelf, and pulled something down. A small blade, clean. With a leather handle, he crouched beside her and held it out. Handle first. Vele stared at it, confused. Jack nodded. It's yours, if you think I'll hurt you or your baby, then protect yourself. But if you believe I want to help, then keep it as a sign that I won't ever hurt you. Vele took the blade slowly, gently. She looked at it, then back at Jack. She said nothing. But her hands stopped shaking. That was enough. Later that night, Jack made them soup. Vele sat near the fire, holding her baby. She still didn't smile. But she no longer looked like a cornered animal. For the first time, she asked him a question. "What is your name?" "Jack," he said. She nodded once. "I'll try to trust you, Jack," he nodded back. "And I'll keep you both safe, Vele." Outside, the storm still raged, but inside the cabin, the fire was warm, and the silence was no longer lonely. The next morning, Jack stepped out of the cabin. The cold air bit at his face, but he didn't mind. He needed fresh air and time to think. He had planned to spend winter alone, maybe hunting small game or reading books by the fire. But now there was an alien mother and her baby sleeping under his roof. Things had changed, and fast. He looked out toward the trees. Snow still falling in slow, soft flakes. Everything was white and still, peaceful. Then he saw them. Footprints? They weren't his. They weren't Vele's. And they definitely weren't animal tracks. Boots' heavy, deep prints, like from armored feet. His eyes narrowed. They came from the woods, stopped about 20 feet from his cabin, and turned back. Whoever it was had stood and watched for a while before leaving. Jack's stomach tightened. Someone had been here during the night, watching them. He crouched near the tracks and touched the snow still fresh. Whoever it was had come just hours ago, maybe even while he and Vele were asleep. He stood up and looked toward the forest. Only silence answered him, but Jack had been in enough. Wars to know when someone was hunting, and this was no random wanderer. He hurried back inside and shut the door tight. Vele looked up from where she was feeding her baby. Her face was calm, but her eyes were always alert, always afraid. "You said they could track you," Jack said. "I think someone was out there last night." He told her about the footprints. Vele's hands froze, the cup in her grip trembling. "They found us," she whispered. "It's too soon. I thought we had more time." Jack grabbed his coat and started pulling out old supplies from the storage chest trope. Wire, nails, and his old combat knife. "I'll set up traps, tripwires, alarms, anything that can slow them down." Vele looked at him in shock. "You're helping us even now?" Jack didn't look at her as he answered. "I don't leave mothers and babies to die. I don't care what planet you're from." Vele blinked, her silver eyes wide. No one had ever said something like that to her before, not even among her own kind. Outside, Jack set up lines between trees, small bells and hidden trip triggers. It wouldn't stop a full squad, but it would warn him. Every time he drove a nail into the wood or tied a wire around a branch, he kept thinking, who were they? Why didn't they attack last night? Were they testing him? Watching Vele? Or the child? That night, Jack slept near the door, axe beside him, Vele, and the baby stayed close to the fire. The baby made a few soft cries, but quickly went quiet in his mother's arms. The cabin was silent, too silent. Jack's instincts were screaming, but nothing moved. No wind, no birds, no distant animals. Then something shifted in the shadows near the window. A flicker like a shadow where none should be. Jack didn't move. He listened, barely breathing. There it was again, a shape, tall, sleek, and fast. It moved past the window like smoke, almost too quick to follow. Jack gripped the axe tight, heart racing. He didn't open the door. He didn't need to. Whoever it was, they weren't ready to attack. Not yet. They were watching, waiting in the morning. The footprints were back, deeper this time, circling the cabin. Something had knelt near the wall and touched it. Claw marks scraped into the... Would like someone testing its strength? Jack showed them to Vele. She said nothing at first, and finally whispered, "It's the Rathburn." Jack frowned. "What are they?" Vele's voice was low and full of fear. "Once they were men, like your kind. Now they are only shadows and orders. They obey the biolords without question. They smell fear, they follow warmth, and they never stop until the job is done." Jack looked back toward the woods. "So they're hunting you, like a mission." Vele nodded. "They want my baby. He's special. His energy is pure, stronger than mine. They'll use him, turn him into a weapon." Jack's jaw tightened. He stared at the line of trees for a long moment, then turned to Vele. "Then we'll make this place a trap, not a shelter." Vele watched him carefully. She had expected fear or anger or even blame. But Jack only moved with purpose. He was already drawing lines in the snow with a stick. "Setting plans in motion. If they want him, they'll have to go through me," he said. And his voice was calm like a man who had made up his mind long ago. Vele looked down at her child for the first time in weeks. Her lips trembled in something close to hope. Maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. Asterisk, the fire had burned low. Outside, the sky was dark, heavy with clouds. Inside the cabin, Jack sat sharpening his knife, his eyes scanning the windows again and again. Everything felt too still, too quiet. Vele rocked her baby slowly, trying to get him to sleep, but something was wrong. The baby's skin glowed faintly, not warm and soft like before, but bright and sharp. He squirmed in her arms, making small, high-pitched cries. Then the crying grew louder. Jack looked up. "Is he okay?" Vele didn't answer at first. She stared at her baby in horror. No, not now." "He's not just crying," she whispered. "He's calling them." Jack stood quickly. "What do you mean calling them?" Vele clutched the child close, her voice shaking. "Our children don't cry like humans. When they're scared, their bodies release energy. It's like a signal. It echoes through the air." Jack's eyes went wide. "You mean that sound others can hear it?" Vele nodded, panic in her face. "If the Rathburn are nearby, they'll hear him and they'll come." Jack didn't waste a second. He grabbed his pack, a flashlight, and his rifle. "Then we need to go," he said. "We can't stay here." "But where?" Vele asked, holding her child tighter. Jack thought quickly, then pointed toward the old mine behind the hill. "The tunnels, they're deep. The signal can't get through rock." They wrapped the baby in a thick blanket and covered him with layers of cloth to dull the glowing light. The child still whimpered, but softer now. Jack stepped outside first, checking for movement. The snow was falling fast again, and the wind howled through the trees. "No tracks, no shadows yet," he waved. Vele forward. Together, they moved through the snow, leaving the cabin behind. Each step felt heavier, each breath colder. The mine entrance was only a few hundred feet away, but in this storm, it felt like miles. Suddenly, the baby cried again, loud and sharp. Vele tried to hush him, but it was too late. From the trees, a low hum began. It wasn't natural, not wind, not animals. It was mechanical. Cold and rising, Jack turned fast, scanning the woods. "Keep moving," he shouted, pulling Vele forward. They reached the mine just as three shadows broke through the tree line. Tall, black-armored figures moved with inhuman speed. Their eyes glowed red, and steam rose from their backs. The Rathburn had come. Jack pulled a string as they entered the mine, setting off the first trap. A line of sharp spikes fell behind them, blocking the entrance for a few moments. It wouldn't stop them for long, but it would buy time. Inside, the mine was cold and dark. Jack flicked on his flashlight. The beam cutting through the black. Vele followed close, holding the baby. Whispering calming words in her language, they moved deeper into the tunnels. Past old wooden supports and broken rails, water dripped from the ceiling, echoing like tiny footsteps. Jack stopped at a side chamber and pointed. "In there, I can." "Block the path behind us," Vele nodded, stepping inside. Jack worked quickly, dragging metal sheets and broken crates to cover the entrance. Then he turned and sat down, breathing hard. His hands were shaking now. Not from fear, but from adrenaline. Vele sat across from him, her baby finally asleep in her arms. The glow had faded. For now, she looked at Jack and said softly, "You didn't have to do this." Jack didn't answer right away. He looked at the sleeping baby, then back at her. "I couldn't let them take him," he said. "I've seen what monsters do to children." Vele's voice was barely a whisper. "On my world, no one helps without a price." Jack gave a small, sad smile. "Then your world's broken, same as mine." A sudden crash echoed from the mine entrance. The Rathburn were trying to break through the first barrier. Time was running out. Vele looked at Jack. "If they find us here, you'll die. You know that." Jack nodded. "I've faced worse than death." She looked down, silent. Then she whispered, "I will not let them take my child, not while I breathe." Jack stood and handed her his side knife. Then let's make sure they don't get the chance. As the echo of metal on rock grew louder, as the glowing red lights of the Rathburn crept through the tunnel darkness, Jack and Valet stood together in the shadows. It's not as strangers, not as human and alien, but as protectors, as warriors, as family. The tunnels swallowed all light. Even the flashlight Jack held felt weaker now, as if the shadows were trying to eat it. Valet walked behind him, holding her baby close. Each step echoed through the mine like a warning. They were deep underground now, far below the snow, the trees, and the sky. But they were not alone. Behind them, the Rathborn were moving, slow, steady, and silent. No voices, no growls, just the sound of metal on stone and faint hisses of steam. Jack stopped at a fork in the tunnel. He looked left, then right, then shined his light upward. Ancient mining signs were scratched into the walls, but most had faded over time. He chose the right path, narrower, harder to follow. We keep moving, he said. We make it harder for them, Valet nodded, though her legs were shaking. She had walked for days before finding Jack's cabin. Now her body begged for rest, but she kept going. The baby stirred in her arms, glowing faintly again. Jack looked back. That glow's still a signal, isn't it? Valet nodded, her voice low. Yes, but fainter. The deeper we go, the more it fades. They kept walking, past collapsed beams and old tools. The deeper they went, the colder it got. Their breaths turned to mist, and the walls grew wet with freezing water. Then they came upon a strange place. The tunnel opened into a large underground chamber, carved by miners long ago. But something felt different here. The air buzzed faintly, and the rocks shimmered with a soft blue hue. Jack stepped in carefully, light sweeping the walls. It wasn't natural, not all of it. Some of the markings weren't human. Symbols etched into stone, glowing with the same color as Valet's skin. Valet stopped, staring in shock. This is from my people, she whispered. I didn't know anything was left on this planet. Jack looked at her. You recognize these markings? She nodded slowly. They're from the old voice, the way our ancestors marked safe places. Jack looked around the room again, then he pointed to the ceiling. It's solid rock, deep. No signals will get through. We can rest here. They quickly blocked the tunnel entrance with old metal crates and stone. It's not enough to stop the Rathburn, but enough to hide their scent, slow their steps. Valet placed the baby down on a soft patch of cloth and lit a small glowing crystal from her pack. The room lit up gently, casting a blue light across the walls. For the first time in days, her shoulders relaxed. Jack sat nearby, opening his pack. He passed her a small protein bar and a canteen. She took them gratefully and began to eat. You never asked, she said suddenly, why I trusted you? Jack looked up. No, I didn't. Ellie smiled faintly when you handed me the blade. You didn't flinch, not even for a second. Jack shrugged. I figured if you wanted to stab me, you would have done it already. She laughed, a quiet, soft sound, almost forgotten. For a moment it made the mind feel warm. Then the sound came, a clicking, sharp and hollow, echoing through the tunnel. Jack stood fast, rifle in hand. The Rathburn had found the fork in the tunnel. Valet grabbed the baby and pressed her back against the wall. Jack aimed toward the blocked path. They're close, he said. But they still don't know exactly where we are. Then he noticed something. The glowing markings on the wall were changing, pulsing slowly, as if reacting to the baby's energy. Is that normal? He asked. Valet's eyes widened. No, it only reacts to ancient blood-pure lineage. The baby reached out a small hand toward the wall and something shifted. A low hum filled the chamber. Oh. The wall behind them began to tremble, and then opened a hidden passage, untouched for centuries. Revealed itself. Jack stared. Your ancestors really didn't want anyone finding this. Valet stepped forward. This is sacred ground. Not even I knew it was here. Behind them, the tunnel shook again, heavier steps. Closer now. They didn't have time inside. Now, Jack ordered, grabbing supplies and pushing her toward the hidden passage. Once inside, the wall began to close on its own, sealing them in darkness. The sound of the Rathburn faded behind them. Blocked by ancient stone inside the secret chamber, Silence returned. Jack lit a flare, the red light showing smooth walls, strange machines, and a small platform in the center. Glowing softly, it was a sanctuary, untouched by war. A place made to protect the last of something rare and powerful. Vele whispered, "This place." It knew him. Jack placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then maybe there's more to your baby than even you understand." And for the first time, Vele didn't look afraid. She looked ready. The hidden chamber was silent. Thick stone walls blocked out all sound from the tunnels above. The only light came from the glowing symbols on the floor. Vele sat near the platform, cradling her baby. Jack stood near the sealed entrance, every muscle tense. He didn't trust the silence. Not now, not. "After everything, they're still out there," Jack whispered. Vele nodded, her voice low. "They don't stop, not until they complete the hunt." Jack turned.
"No."
Walking the perimeter of the ancient room, it felt older than anything he had seen. The walls held not just marks, but stories, images carved deep into stone, showing beings like Vele, surrounded by stars. One panel showed a figure standing between two armies, arms out, protecting something small. Jack stared at it for a long moment, then looked at Vale. "That's what I am now, isn't it?" he asked. Vale's eyes met his. "Yes," she said. "You are the shield." Suddenly the walls vibrated, dust fell from the ceiling, and a deep hum echoed through the stone. Then came the sound they feared, metal hands slamming against rock. The Wrathborn had found the outer wall. "They're here," Jack said, grabbing his rifle. He checked the rounds, only a few left. No backup, no escape. But still, he didn't hesitate. "If they break through, they'll come straight. For you and the baby, I know," Vele whispered, holding her child tighter. "Then I hold them off," Jack said. Stepping toward the sealed door, Vele stood quickly. "No, you can't stop them alone." Jack gave a small smile. "I don't plan to stop them," said. "I just need to slow them." He placed his body between the family and the stone wall. He planted his feet, raised his rifle, and faced the unknown. Vele's voice shook. "Why would you die for us?" Jack didn't turn. "Because you're not just running anymore," he said. "You're fighting now, and so am I." The wall cracked. Light burst through the seams as the Wrathburn began to cut through with heat blades. Smoke filled the chamber, and Jack's finger tightened on the trigger. One slab of stone fell forward, then another. The first Wrathburn stepped in, tall, armored, black eyes glowing red. It scanned the room and spotted Jack immediately, but it didn't rush. It waited. Then two more stepped in behind it. Three shadows, one man. Jack didn't move. He aimed calm as stone. The lead Wrathburn lifted a weapon. Jack fired first. The shot hit its shoulder, knocking it off balance. He fired again, chest. Shot sparks flew, but the thing didn't fall. The second Wrathborn charged. Jack rolled aside, swung the butt of his rifle, and slammed it into the side of its head. Metal cracked, but not enough. It grabbed him, slammed him against the wall. Jack groaned in pain, bones screaming, but he didn't let go of the weapon. Then came a sound, singing. Vele, standing at the edge of the room, was singing in a voice Jack had never heard before. Her words were not human, but full of power. In sorrow, the baby glowed bright in her arms, like a star come to life. The Wrathburn froze. Their red eyes flickered. One of them took a step back. The song ancient, deep. The blood of her people cut through their programming. The one that had Jack pinned began to shake. Its grip loosened. Then, it dropped him. Jack hit the floor, gasping for air. He looked up as the Wrathborn backed away from Vele's voice. Then one of them, taller than the rest, spoke. "We. Remember this sound?" it said, its voice deep and broken. Vele kept singing, tears running down her cheeks. Jack stood again beside her, now bruised but ready. Wrathburn lowered their weapons. They didn't attack. They looked at the glowing baby and stepped back, as if unsure. Then the tall one pointed to the child. "He is the Songborn," it said. Jack blinked. "The what?" Vele's voice trembled. "It's only a legend, that one day a child would sing the song so pure it would stop the war." The Wrathburn turned to leave, slowly, but the leader paused. It looked at Jack. You are not like the others of your kind, it said. Jack wiped blood from his lip. Yeah, I get that a lot. Then they were gone. The Rathburn disappeared into the dark, and the chamber went still again. Jack turned to Vele. She was crying silently, still holding her baby. Jack limped forward and sat beside them. You didn't need a weapon, he said softly. You were the weapon. Vele looked at him and whispered, No, you were the shield, and because of you, he is safe. The sun finally rose again. It shined down on the snowy woods, untouched and quiet. The wind had calmed. The storm was over. Birds returned, singing soft songs across the trees, but deep below the surface. In the ancient chamber, something far more important had happened. Peace, real peace. Jack sat against the wall, his back aching and his ribs sore, but he was smiling. Beside him, Vele held her baby close. Humming softly, the child was calm. Eyes closed, glowing gently, not from fear, but from comfort. For the first time in what felt like forever, they were safe. Jack stared at the stone door the Rathburn had gone through. I still don't understand why they left, he said. Vele looked at him and spoke quietly, because they remembered who they were. Your kindness reached something they had buried, in the child's song. Reminded them. Jack shook his head slowly. I wasn't trying to be a hero. Vele smiled for the first time, a full warm smile that lit up her face. I know, that's why you were one time past. They explored the sanctuary together. Inside were clean chambers, old alien machines still working, glowing pools of warm water and soft lights from the walls. It had been built long ago to protect life, not just to hide from death. Jack helped fix up one of the chambers, turning it into a small living space. They stayed underground for days, maybe weeks. It was hard to tell time in the dark. But they had food, water, warmth, and each other. One night, Vele sat beside Jack near the glowing pool. The baby slept nearby, wrapped in soft cloth. She looked at Jack for a long time before speaking. Do you miss your people? Jack was quiet for a moment. My people, he said. They stopped being my people a long time ago. The war changed them. Changed me too. Vele nodded slowly. I know what that feels like. She looked down, fingers gently tracing the floor. I used to think home was a place, a city, a world. But now, I think it's a person. Jack looked at her. And do you think you found that person? She didn't answer with words. She reached out, took his hand, and placed it gently on her child's head. Then she looked into Jack's eyes and whispered, Will you help me raise him? As his father? Jack blinked, surprised but not scared. He looked at the child, then back at Vele. I thought you'd never ask, he said. Vele smiled, eyes soft and glowing. They weren't strangers anymore. They weren't just survivors. They were something new. Something better. A family. When spring came to the surface, Jack climbed up through the mine tunnel one morning. He stood in the fresh light, breathing deeply. The forest had changed. New life bloomed through the snow. He looked back toward the cabin, still standing, still strong, a place where it all began, and now, a place they could return to. Together he walked back down to the chamber. Where Vele was teaching the baby to hum little songs, the baby clapped. Its hands glowed each time she smiled. Jack laughed softly. I think he's learning too fast. Vele tilted her head. He takes after his human father. Jack looked around the sanctuary one last time. The glowing walls, the soft light, the silence that once felt like a tomb but now felt like a cradle. It had served its purpose, but now it was time to return to the surface. Together, they packed what they needed. Vele carried her baby close. Jack carried the rest of blankets, food, old scrolls of her people at the mouth of the mine. They paused. The air was fresh, birds singing, the sun warm. Jack turned to Vele, ready to start over. Vele looked at him, her eyes shining. Not start over. She said start new, as they walked toward the cabin through the fresh green and soft snow. The baby giggled and reached for the light, and behind them, the shadows of war faded, replaced by hope. Hope made of firelight, trust, and the unbreakable bond between three souls who were once lost but now found together.